Story 1: Tuxedo's Warning, a near break-in and the cat who saved me. I love staying up late and watching TV until 3 a.m. This is a common occurrence for me when I'm home alone with my dad, who travels for work every 2 weeks and comes home for one. While I was still in school, it was easy for me to get away with this habit. For context, I live with just my dad, as my mom passed away from cancer when I was only 12 years old. However, I'm not completely alone, as I have a tuxedo cat named Tuxedo, who has been with me since I turned 16. He keeps me company during the long Canadian winter nights when I'm by myself. Tuxedo's two favorite places to sit are a small red couch on the right side of the TV, and a small table in front of the large living room window. I usually occupy the big red couch, which is right in front of the TV. It's worth noting that my dad always insists I close the curtains on the large living room window when it becomes nighttime. He believes it's dangerous to let people see into the house, as it could potentially tempt them to break in. I always believed that nobody would be dumb enough to break into a house with the lights on rather than a house with no one inside. Therefore, I usually left the curtains open the entire 2 weeks my dad was away due to my laziness in closing them. On this particular night, I was watching a documentary about a couple being held hostage in Australia, or some other location. These types of documentaries aired late, which didn't bother me as an 18-year-old. However, Tuxedo seemed to have a different perspective as he stared longingly out the living room window. As the show entered a commercial break, Tuxedo began to make soft noises, his eyes fixed on the front door to the left of the window. He only did this when he saw someone outside the door, which was more common during the day than at night. It was actually very unusual for him to do this so late at night. At first, I thought it could be an outdoor cat or a wild rabbit by the door, but the Tuxedo cat's worry made me suspect otherwise. I decided to investigate. My front door entrance has 2 levels, the top floor where the Tuxedo cat and I were, and a lower level between the top floor and the basement. There was a small staircase leading from the top floor to the front door, and a smaller staircase leading from the front door to the basement. As I stood at the top of the staircase, preparing to go down and open the door to see for myself, I noticed a large, shadowy figure in the frosted glass of the front door. The sight of it nearly made me faint. It was definitely not my dad, and it was 11 p.m. at night, not a time I wanted to see anyone. I could tell that the figure had something in the door and was trying to force it open. I can't fully explain what came over me at that moment. It could have been the realization that I was alone in the house with no one to help me, or the urgency I felt to protect Tuxedo from the intruder. I grabbed my cell phone from the couch arm and turned on the lights above the front door. The shadowed figure was now clearly visible, looking startled as our eyes met through the frosted glass. His face was distorted in the jagged reflection. "Leave now. I'm calling the police. Get out of here," I shouted. Without waiting for me to finish, he fled across my yard and jumped into a car across the street. I couldn't even identify the make or model, let alone the license plate, before he was gone. All that was left was a crowbar on the front step. It's unclear what the man was doing at my house, but I didn't recognize him in the few seconds I saw him. This experience shattered my belief that I was immune to danger, and I wonder if he might have still attacked if I hadn't been awake that night. One thing is certain, Tuxedo saved my life. I don't want to think about what could have happened if he hadn't been looking out the window at that moment. Story 2: Navigating Danger, a young woman's solo road trip encounter. In 2013, after graduating college, I planned a summer-long road trip that I had been anticipating for over a year. However, at the last minute, my friends backed out. Determined not to let that ruin my plans, I packed up my guitar and set off on my own. As a 26-year-old woman, I traveled across the country, camping in national forests and rest stops, and living out of a borrowed minivan. Despite my limited resources, the trip was going well and I was having a great time. After a few months on the road, I made it to California and was exploring the Vallejo-San Francisco area. One evening, while searching for a new campsite, I ended up on a Bay Area highway with confusing detours. As I drove through a small town, I wasn't sure if I was still following the detour or not. It was around 9 p.m., but no one was out to ask for directions. As I tried to use my phone to navigate, I realized the signal was poor and my phone wasn't very reliable. Frustrated, I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I seemed to be leaving the town and entering a warehouse district, so I decided to head towards the highway in the distance. The road I was on led me through rows of factories, but there were no exits. Despite this, I continued on, hoping to reach the highway. Along the way, I passed a large old car in a factory parking lot. As I drove past, the person in the car turned on their headlights and began following me. I didn't think much of it and assumed the person was lost and hoped I knew where I was going. The car stayed behind me for a while until I reached the highway overpass. To my disappointment, I turned into a gravel lot that ended at a fence beneath the highway. The situation seemed ominous as the large car pulled up directly behind the van, blocking it from moving forward or making a U-turn. The driver's behavior raised red flags and made the van's driver feel uneasy, despite trying to convince themselves that the other driver was simply lost and their inconvenient parking was an accident. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When the van's nose came up against the fence, the other driver pulled up even closer, blocking the van in completely. The van's driver was able to get a good look at the other driver, who was a man wearing a baseball cap and a long, wild beard resembling that of the band ZZ Top. I was in the right lane with a crazy man blocking me in completely on the left, and 3 cement pylons to the right, running the length of the lot with the car in between them. This is where luck came into play. I noticed something in the pylons that many others may not have. Before this trip, I had spent a short period of time as a bus driver, during which I trained newer drivers. One of the maneuvers on the commercial driving test in my state is called the backward serpentine. To pass this test, you must reverse the bus through 3 cones placed in a straight line. Because the cones are only as wide as the bus, not long, you must turn at the precise moment to master this move. Fortunately, the situation I was in was similar to this maneuver, although doing it with cones is slightly different from using solid cement blocks. If I had crashed into the blocks, I would not have been able to drive away. It's unclear what the other driver had in mind. I quickly reversed my car, using the maneuver I had taught so many others. It's important to note that driving tests are graded on accuracy, not speed, so this was the first time I had ever had to do it so quickly. As I navigated around the second pylon, the man in the big car seemed to realize what was happening and got stuck against the fence. It took him a few turns to turn his car around, but by then, I had already completed the maneuver and was speeding down the road again. He tried to follow me, but it was unclear if he was chasing me or running away. The area I was in only had one way in and out, and I was still lost and worried that the man knew the area well, as he had apparently been waiting for lost tourists like me. Despite my fear and adrenaline, I rolled down my window and shouted at the man, "You picked the wrong girl to play driving games with." A robotic voice then responded, "No results for driving games." Confused, I remembered my discarded and useless phone navigator, which had fallen on the floor of the passenger side during the incident. I didn't want to stop and pick it up, so I screamed I-80 at the top of my lungs. Finally, the phone understood me and started giving me directions back to the highway. I drove around the nearby highways, stopping at gas stations to check out other vehicles, and getting off the road a few times to make sure I wasn't being followed. Fortunately, the man's car was distinctive, but I still did all this for over an hour before I felt safe enough to stop and rest for the night. Hello and thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate your support and I hope you enjoyed the content. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to my channel, and hitting the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new videos. Your support means a lot to me and I can't thank you enough for watching. Thank you again and have a great day.